All right, so here we are, another Friday.
Howdy, folks.
Howdy, folks. We wanted to take a minute here to introduce you to a new project.
Not exactly new.
This car has sat idle for years in neglect, but it is, despite its dust, an absolutely gorgeous example of this vehicle, which becomes increasingly rare every year.
I believe I've had this car for 15 years now.
15 years, dear God.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam never gets rid of anything.
Nope. This is one I'm never going to sell. All right, that's enough. Hey, it's not all mine.
Oh yeah, it's somebody else's, sorry.
Some of it is.
Okay.
Some of that's Alex's stuff still.
We believe you.
This one is like the one car that I'm pretty much set that I'm never going to sell. I used to drive it every summer. It used to be my summer daily driver. I always had some sort of a beater for winter, usually a Corolla all-track.
Which you see pictured below.
Which I also there. So I still have that. But I stopped driving it in summer because it's so low and Milwaukee streets are terrible. And there's potholes and heaves everywhere. I felt like I was just destroying this nice old car. So I parked it and bought something different. And I've only driven it a handful of times since then. And now it's been about 6 years since I've driven it. Today, what we're going to do is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. These cars never came with a rear sway bar from the factory, had nothing. So a few years ago, I bought a Suspension Techniques.
Oh, that's the brand. Okay.
Yeah, rear sway bar kit for an EF hatch should work.
Okay.
All the suspension geometry of all the Civics are the same. So I have a kit to install an adjustable rear sway bar in this. Mm-hmm. I bought Skunk 2 lower control arms
for the mounts,
so that I have a place to bolt in the end link, which hopefully is in the right spot, but it should be. Mm-hmm. And then
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and then I bought a set, kind of on a whim. I bought a set of strut braces, front and rear, that are Megan.
I feel like I've always said Megan.
Megan.
Why, after 6 years, are we digging this up?
Well, partially just because I'm sick of looking at it and thinking about it and talking about it as if it's a car that's on the back burner and doesn't work, because it really does.
And I don't know if you've noticed on this channel, but we're a big fan of finishing shit. We're doing it.
Yeah.
Driving stuff.
Right.
Doing it.
I want to use the car. I want to drive it here. I'm not going to drive it every day like I used to, but I want to be able to pick it up on Friday night and drive it for a weekend, and then, or take it to a car show or a track day.
So chubby, my arm's getting tired. Oh God.
I've just decided to just get it going, just drive it, even though it's not going to be the hot rod that I want it to be eventually right now. Oh well, it's still a fun car. It's like a little go-kart. Even with the stock motor, it's fun.
I mean, if you've ever driven an EF, I feel like a lot of people our age have definitely driven one.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're
awesome fun, just
cars.
stock.
They're awesome cars. Like,
yeah.
I love the greenhouse. I had that sedan.
Yeah, talk about a greenhouse on this thing.
It's so cool. I mean, and you can just see everything. There's not a single blind spot on the freaking thing. We're gonna get to work on that stuff. And we got a nice table full of parts here.
Yeah, let's show them some of the parts. So we got the ST sway bar and bracketry and hardware and
bucket, bago parts,
bag of bolts. And then we got the Skunk 2 Alpha lower control arms, which look really nice and were not that expensive.
Those look and feel very nice.
Yeah.
Like, feel a lot higher quality than their price.
Yeah, and a lot higher quality than a lot of the lower control arms for Hondas that you see out there. That was the thing. I didn't want to buy some junk.
Well, I knew the old hot ones were the blocks.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, like BLOX, because you used to be able to see it on the car, they lower them.
Yeah,
And you
written
can
on the control arm.
And you can see
Yeah.
blocks. And yeah.
So then this is just the front of the Megan Racing strut brace. The rear is already in the car. It's not bolted in yet, but I just placed it in there to make sure it would fit. And it looks like it'll fit just fine. So and this is the front. Yeah, that's the plan. Hopefully all this stuff is going to be on the car in 20 minutes.
That's it.
20 minutes. Zip, zip, zip.
That's all we need. All right, so new control arms, looking good.
Very sweet. Aluminium.
Now we're working through this
Sway
kit
bar.
here for the rear sway bar, because this car never had a rear sway bar, so it has these L brackets that mount up here. This is where previously the tow hook was. So yeah, these brackets look pretty good, and that's what comes off of there.
This is what was in place here. So these 3 bolts you can see correspond to those. So there's some nice captured nuts in the frame rails already. Yeah, nice setup. Good spot to mount a sway bar, although this is a 4-wheel drive wagon, which is not what this sway bar is made for. So although for the most part, everything's kind of the same, we're running into a few issues here. First of all, the body, which was luckily easy to adjust, but this piece of the body here, this inner fender piece, was in the way. I just was able to push it over by hand because it's just a little...
And here, if you can bring that up.
Little piece.
There you go. Now that's nice and clear, so that you can see there.
Now we can see that. And same thing over here. It was a little bit beefier over here because there's a filler neck in the way. But I was also able to clearance that with a pry bar. Just moved it a little bit.
And then
now, there was also a vibration damper bolted onto the rear diff mount. That came off, but that also had a captured nut in it, in the bracket. So we had to put a new nut on there.
which already...
Well, yeah, the balancer itself was already coming apart, was already gone. Which is just a big solid steel slug that fits through those 2 holes with little bushing on it on either side.
And that was already gone.
Just a vibration, yeah.
So really, it was only being used as this nut.
I had already pulled that off. Yeah, right. So there was a nut there, and so that was in the way of the sway bar. Even with that being off, yeah, it's very close to the diff mount. Something might need to be done about that, but maybe not.
I don't know, yeah.
We'll see. Right now, this is actually contacting the strut right there. You can see this one's a little, both of these struts are a little hacky. Sorry, I did these a long time ago when I was just learning. This one's hitting over here. If you see, right now that's that's the issue we're having.
Yeah, I can see the contact pretty well.
But that's also, right now the sway bar is farther away from the control arm than it's going to be when it's driving down the road. So what we got to do is put the wheels back on it and drop it down on the ground and get some weight on it to start seeing where the ride height's going to be. It's not going to be perfect because 100% of the weight's not going to be on it, but it'll get us closer and we'll start to figure out what's in the way and what's not. The sway bar is still at full vertical rotation. The center of the sway bar still was touching the rear diff mount.
Like
so
the ears on the rear.
Just barely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the top ridges of the whole, like the outside of the housing. I clearanced the top edges just a little bit. I used the Dremel with a little carbide bit and just shaved off a little bit.
I mean, like a millimeter.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like literally nothing.
Like a millimeter. The ST rear sway bar almost all of the hardware that comes with that is standard. The issue is the Skunk 2 lower control arms have threaded bosses that are, of course, metric because the car is metric, and they want you to nut and bolt the sway bar end link onto a bracket that they supply you with, which is fine. I mean, that would work.
And here's their little bracket, and this actually goes onto the lower shock mount.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this goes onto the lower shock mount in the lower control arm.
Yeah, you would sandwich that into in between the hardware that mounts the shock to the lower control arm. You would sandwich that in, and then mount the link to that.
This would go in
But
some orientation.
I mean, that would work, but I don't really like that so much if I have the option to be able to bolt it right to the control arm.
Then the bar, you want to grab that?
The strut brace, yeah.
Strut brace. So this just needs to be shortened, which is, again, not the biggest deal. This is just a little bit too long.
Yeah, and again, also not the fault of the manufacturer necessarily, because they don't say that it's made for this wagon. Yeah, see this mark here?
Yeah, it's kind of really hard to see that.
It's that much too long, which is a lot. But
which is a lot.
I mean, I guess.
But it's also just an aluminum bar.
I shouldn't give them too many excuses because it does say 88 to 93 all or something in the application. And this is a 91. That would be included in the all, but
you can expect a letter from our strongly worded letter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. It's that's a weird car. I've dealt with that my entire life.
It's maybe the outlier.
Maybe that's why I deal with too many weird things that are never right in the first place. But I'm used to it at this point. So really, all this needs is a trim, cut back, either this cut off, ground down, and re-welded here, or a new aluminum tube found and of the right size, and then re-welded here. But that's all that needs to happen. Everything else fits fine. The front strut brace is on, fit perfect.
Yeah, we can take a quick look at that too.
Looks spectacular.
So the front strut brace, that fit beautifully, with the exception of some of these plastic, all the mounting tabs and everything for the wiring harness clips and this fuse box over here. That doesn't want to be back where it is with that extra spacer in there from the strut tower brace. So that was pretty minor, but I mean, fits great. Really hugs close to that intake manifold and all that stuff, which is kind of cool. I don't know if you can see. It's, looks good. Here we are, end of our evening. We learned some things, had overall, I think, an extremely successful night.
Yeah.
Everything aftermarket-wise, with the exception of the rear strut bar, is strut brace. The bar itself, the brackets are great. They fit the top of the shock mounts. Shock towers.
Yeah.
They fit that just fine, which is great. And height-wise, they were good with a little bit of trimming of the interior trim, which race car.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
expected.
It's a wagon with a super low first gear. It's obviously a race car. They wanted it that way.
Yeah, right. That's why it's a 6-speed.
Precisely. Can we just take a second to look at the underside of this hood?
Oh, yeah.
My God. This is like a museum. Look at when does this sticker exist anywhere other than right here? I don't even know. This is cool. Anyway, that's it for the night. We got some stuff done. Feeling good about it. And I think that's a wrap.
Yep, that's all for tonight.
All right. We'll see you with the next update, and hopefully we're ootin' a boot with this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
For the first time in forever.
Might need a wax too.
Yeah. We're going to call Alex.
Yeah, we should.
So, paging Alex Caspi. Desperate detail needed.
Yeah.
We
Major
will
detail.
expect to see you one of these weekends very soon. So, clear out your schedule, buddy. Have a good night. Yeah.
Like, it was a mandate. It's like essentially law that every piece of hardware on every car since the 80s is metric. Yet you go to any hardware store, any place that you go buy nuts and bolts has
a massive selection of
10 times the amount of standard hardware and a tiny little section of metric. It drives me insane because literally everything on the road, even big trucks, I work on big trucks every day.
Mm-hmm.
They're all metric.
I feel like
they have to be.
Yeah.
The only things that aren't metric are like the upfits. Yeah, if there's a body added to it or a boom, a crane, something like that. If they're made in America, sometimes they use standard American hardware, but that's like the exception. Everything else on the road, everywhere, is metric.
Well, and
Can we get some metric hardware, please? This drives me insane. So
we're gonna need you to contact your congressman.
Yeah, please.
Or congresswoman. And
talk to your senators. Talk to your congressman.
Send a letter. Get pen and paper out right now.
Let's get this rolled out already. I mean, I don't care. I don't mind using inches and feet for regular, building a house.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing that you're talking about is that in your application, everything's metric. Yeah. Also, in the medical field, everything's metric. Right. So anytime it matters, we're using the metric system.
Right, yeah. If something needs to be specific and correct, it's metric.
But otherwise, then we just use...
It drives me insane.
What, empirical? What is it?
Yeah.
Standard. I mean, I always call it like standard.
Which is funny also because the UK is also now metric.
Yeah.
Even though that's where we got all this. Anyway.
All right. So we've been at it, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. Not that long.
It's 11 o'clock. We started getting the car on the rack at 9:30.
Okay, yeah.
So hour and a half, all told.
Yeah. So anyway, been a productive hour and a half.
Yeah.
We've got the rear control arms done. I get why people do this and why they work on these cars because my God.
Well, okay, but
I get that there's bad things.
This is an exception. Normally, every one of those bolts is seized in the bushing.